makes
Yeah,
me feel
yeah.
you're
Well,
one. You're
yeah.
a lot bigger guy than
Yeah,
I am.
well,
man.
that's
I'm gonna do this.
that's not
Maybe I could do
untrue.
with a pillow or
I'll
something.
sit further back. How about that?
Yeah,
Just
that
like
would-
with
yeah,
the big fish.
That would make.
there
I'll
you
get
go.
right in here. I mean,
All right. So good morning, everybody. Lance Tarchioni and obviously Dr. Belo here with you on Ask the Agronomist this morning. So we will also be joined by a couple of Dr. Belo's students who are presenting at the Crop Physiology Field Day, which is why I'm in Champaign. He's always in Champaign, but he's got big things going on today with their field day, and got about 8 different presentations.
yeah, 8 of them. And
Yeah.
hey, by the way, that's why we're starting this at a different time. So thanks for that flexibility.
Yeah. Well, I had a luxurious hotel room here in Champaign last night, so I was here anyway. So we were starting early so we can get done in time for him to speak, and for Sam, who you'll get introduced to here in a minute, and Jared to speak as well today, along with some other presenters, and be a lot of good content today. No rain out today.
Yeah, looks good.
So
after last year's disaster.
if you were here last year, you might remember they had to scramble and cram you all into the farm shop here to get away from cloud to ground lightning and heavy rain. And as it turns out, probably could have just let that pass and everything been all right, but you didn't know that at the time.
Yeah, and I think our administrators are a little overcautious.
Yeah. It's something about not wanting to get people struck by lightning in a university event, I'm sure. So, but anyway, thanks for being with us here this morning. As always, ask your questions. Dr. Belo was peppering me with his questions before we got started here, so he was prepared for your questions. So, so please ask questions if you have them. And he usually does this with me at the end of the year after everything is known. So this is a little bit different for him. We're only halfway through the season and things aren't quite known yet. But he's always got an opinion. So even if we're not sure, we'll answer your questions. And he did say that Sam was going to take all the ones that he didn't want to handle. So we've got Sam in here if we need him. And we were talking about things such as pollination issues and high temperatures. There is some data out there. As far as nighttime temperatures go, this is one of the hottest Julys on record.
Not a good deal.
Yeah, that's not what we like. I like cool nights, and so does corn. And we did not give it cool nights. We've got corn that's well dented already, which seems a bit early to me to be dented. I like a long, slow, cool grain fill period.
I think that's a lot of heat units, Lance.
Yes.
That's driving the crop to mature pretty fast.
Yeah, when it's and I've always argued the formula does not account for this when it's 86 degrees for an hour or 86 degrees for 15 hours in a day. You get the same number of heat units.
Yeah, you do.
And that's not right.
It would take more math.
It would. It would get
to do it the other way.
Maybe even some calculus or something. I don't know what kind of math that would take, but above me. But I honestly think that's, we talk about how corn hybrids develop faster when you plant them later. Well, it's not really because the corn hybrid knows it's late and it needs to hurry up. It's because of the temperature.
The phenology of corn is tracks temperature very accurately.
Yeah. So we're I think we're speeding towards black layer faster than I wish we were. We've had some pollination issues. We've had some stress causing some tip back. We've got people that feel their kernels a little shallow. So I characterize our corn crop as very good, not as good as it looks from the road. And I think for a lot of people, I think they'll be disappointed it won't be as good as their corn was last year. Now, the U.S. crop might be better than last year, but I don't know that the Central Illinois record crop that we had in 24 will be repeated in 25. And so those are some of the things that I've been talking to people about. Obviously, a lot of questions around, should I be doing a second app on fungicides? And you guys have, in certain years, have had trials looking at that. And I think a lot of people have tried it. So in 21, we all should have done it. A lot of people tried it in 22, 23, and 24, saw minimal benefit to it. And this might be the first year since 21 that we should have done it. So I am encouraging a lot of trials. I'm not necessarily saying that, you absolutely have to. But if you're so inclined and you want to try a second application, Now would be the time. If you're going to do it, I wouldn't wait any longer than now. You're probably about 3 weeks after your first application at tassel time. And if you're going to make that second shot, I would be getting it done. I love to encourage trials. And with yield monitors these days, it's super easy to do a trial and second half of fungicide, especially if you're flying it on. So if you're using drone, helicopter, or plane, have them go crossways or maybe diagonally across the field. And then every pass through the field with your yield monitor, you're going to go into and out of that treated area. Just make it wide enough that you can get some good data out of that. You don't have to spray the whole field. And we can just kind of get some good information on what was the response of that application. But you showed me, you want to show those corn ear pictures you had on your phone?
So let me talk about this second application of fungicide. So my guess is if you've had more than average rainfall over the last month, then it might be a reasonable bet to do it. You know, I don't have to tell you that rain really helps the disease. That's why it didn't pay in 22 or 23. It was just too dry.
Right.
So if it's been really wet, that's a recipe for potential disease.
Right.
If it's been less than average rainfall, my guess is you might get away with it. Yeah. So I wanted to talk about pollination issues. And I can tell you, looking at myself with Lance, Lance, you're a fair bit bigger than me, man. I'm sitting up on the chair as much as I can to have my head show on the screen.
We could probably adjust something here a little bit.
Yeah, well, that makes me feel better.
There you go.
So the good news, Lance, is I appear to have more hair than you, but I'm a lot shorter. Which is causing me some anxiety here.
But you're an anxious guy anyway. We don't.
I
am.
I
don't want to do that.
I watch myself. Apparently, I'm a fidgeter, Lance, when I'm doing these things.
You've noticed that before.
Yeah, it's somewhat troubling, actually. But do enjoy being with you.
You're awful nice to keep doing it.
And let's talk pollination issues. I don't know if you see that picture. This is what we're seeing a lot of. So notice that's not they're there at the butt. And it hasn't tipped back yet. Yeah, but see how we missed them along the ear. We're actually seeing a lot of that, and I'm going to claim that that's because the crop, that particular crop, pollinated during that 15-day period when we had super high temperatures and really high heat index.
So would that have been? Do you recall? Sometime early May, mid-May planting, or
that would have been early or mid-May planting, pollinated 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
right. Right in the peak of it. So normally, Lance, I can smell the pollen. I mean, I can get a good 100,000 of those granules in my eye, but that didn't happen this year. I know it's still pollinated and the silks look good. But I kind of agree with you. From the road, I thought, hey, this is a hell of a crop. But when you get in it, it doesn't look as good as it did last year.
And if you miss a few kernels during pollination, I mean, typically in a normal year, most hybrids are going to tip back a little bit. If it was going to tip back 100 kernels, let's say, and you had 50 that didn't pollinate, my belief is you'll tip back 50 instead of 100 because you were missing 50 in the first place. That plant can support so many kernels, and it doesn't really matter how many get pollinated. What matters is how many can it support.
And it tip back occurs because it knows it can't support what it pollinated.
Right.
It makes that nasty decision. That's almost an overnight event. So
and I think in some cases, and this may help some of the people that have been struggling with tassel wrap and some other pollination issues. If you miss pollinating part of the ear and you end up having tip back anyway, I'm not sure the pollination issue limited your yield any in that case, because you couldn't feed that many kernels anyway. Now, if you've got an ear that's poorly pollinated, has no tip back, that you probably are leaving some yield on the table. And that's why we say we actually like to see some tip back, because if you see none, it probably means you should have had a few more ears.
Yeah, you didn't plant enough plants if they're all filled to the tip. I can tell you that as well. Lance, this tassel wrap thing has got me looking at a lot of tassels, and I noticed they're a lot smaller than they used to be.
There's a lot of tassel envy this year.
Yeah, and I don't think that's abnormal. I mean, I've been doing this a long time. I remember big tassels, 5 million pollen grains per tassel. Apparently that's more than you need. And apparently that takes a lot of energy to make all that pollen. Right. And then when it's done, it actually shades the plant. So I think we've seen a tendency for modern hybrids to have smaller tassels, less pollen. Even on those small ones, that's 3 million pollen grains per plant. That's usually enough to get the job done. But when we start getting into pollination issues, that's when we look at a lot of tassels.
Right. And I think we've also, and this is normal also, but when you combine it with small tassels, hot days, cloudy days, rainy days, so it can't pollinate when it's wet either. So you need a dry weather period. You need it to be not 100 degrees. You need that plant to not be under stress. So there's a lot of things that you need. And sometimes if you have silks for 3 or 4 or 5 days before you have pollen, they get pretty long. And then you can have situations where they just get covered up by each other and the pollen grain can't physically make its way onto the silk. And worse than that is if you've got pollen before you've got silk. So if the plant got a little out of sync and didn't hit the nick perfectly, you waste a little bit.
Oh, yeah, that ends the silken interval. You want the silks ready before she sheds pollen.
Right. And so, if we had a little bit less pollen because we've got some, not super thrifty tassels, you and I talked about when the tassel forms in the plant, when it's, fairly small, kind of during the same time as ear development, I would say.
Yeah, right around. Shocking. People wouldn't realize it, but if you take a V6 plant and you dissect it, you can find the tassel. So tassel initiation actually occurs at V6. And so I think we only think of what we see with our eye, but some of those smaller tassels or more formed tassels that may have actually occurred way back during vegetative development. I remember the first 2 weeks of June, probably right before tassel formation, but it was really cold and then it turned really hot like overnight. And by the way, at the same time, I put a post-emergent herbicide on. I'm not sure what that did, but I think we're asking a lot of the plant with those extreme weather conditions.
Yeah. So you wonder sometimes. I was talking to somebody recently, and they were nervous about we'd been super hot and we were going to get really cool, and they were fearful that was going to cause some sort of stress and just that quick shift in temperatures and I don't know exactly how that affects the plant, but I wanted it to cool off. I didn't want it to stay as hot as it was, so I said, well, I'm welcoming this cool down, and I think the corn plant is too, and I think it would rather be go from 100 to 70 would be better than the other way around, or staying at 100. But you never know when you have a wide fluctuation in temperature and that plant's shifting gears from growing fast to slowing down to growing fast to slowing down, and there was a lot of comparisons made to rapid growth syndrome with the tassel wrap, and I think it probably is a similar phenomenon in that it's some sort of hormonal imbalance or something, why the leaves didn't unfurl properly. But it's not the same plants, and it's not a continuation of the rapid growth syndrome that we saw early, because those plants were normal for weeks between the early growth wrap and the tassel wrap. So it's not like it was the same plant that was wrapped and stayed wrapped all the way through, but it could be related in that a similar hormonal imbalance in the plant could cause the way the hormones drive how the plant develops, right?
You bet. And whenever we can't explain something completely, Lance, all we got to do is invoke plant growth regulators,
right?
The natural ones in the plant. I'm sure they're involved, and I'm sure that's why there's certain genetics and or trait packages that we saw it in a little bit worse.
Yeah. So I think there's lots of, I guess my last comment on the pollination stuff would be there's lots of reasons why you could have less than perfect pollination in a cornfield. Doesn't necessarily impact your final yield. If it's severe enough, it might. It doesn't. At the end of the day, you don't really care. You just want to get the yield. But it is nice to know if you're missing some kernels on the ear. Was it because it missed the nick? Was it because we had poor weather conditions during pollination? Was it because you had tassel wrap? Was it because you had silk feeding insects? I haven't seen enough beetle pressure this year to cause a lot of silk clipping, but that's another thing that's a normal thing. that causes, pollination problems. And this year there's been all the talk about tassel wrap, which is not a normal thing in my opinion.
Yeah, I've never seen it.
It's a little unique, and there's some people kind of trying to make it sound like it's normal, happens every year. I kind of disagree with that, but a lot of the other stuff that affects pollination more often than tassel wrap is normal stuff that happens every year. And so there's a combination of things going on, and it's good to understand what's going on in your field. Can't change it now. Might not be anything you choose to do differently next year because of it, because it's, every year is going to be different. But, if you can isolate it down to a hybrid or a practice or something, which is hard to do sometimes, but if you can, maybe that's something that you want to make some changes on.
Yeah. So Lance, our hope right now is that kernel weight compensates for less kernels. That's the last yield component that we can manipulate right now. And that is related to leaf health and how long that plant stays green. And that's where the foliar protection might come in. That's where we really got to hope we get some cool nights in the next month.
Yeah. It's and I don't, the forecast I'm looking at doesn't look as hot as it was 2 weeks ago, but it's far from cool.
From cool.
Yeah.
So the optimum temperature for corn is 86 Fahrenheit. And if it's over 86 Fahrenheit, it's stressed. That's daytime temperature. At night, as cool as you can have it.
Right.
Over 73 Fahrenheit at night, that's a bad deal.
Yeah.
For grain fill.
Yeah, and we had some of those in the early grain fill for early planted corn. So what I'm seeing is this: if you planted super early, and you had an early hybrid, like early maturity hybrid, you were probably already close to R3 when it was super hot.
Yeah, that's correct. Correct.
Some of that stuff was far enough along it really couldn't tip back. Now it may have very shallow kernels because of that. That's the stuff that's denting already. I mean, it's really, really flying through the process. And then if you get a little later than that, that's the stuff that was, right after pollination when you had the heat, pollinated fine, and it was, had 45 long years. And I tell people every day, it's a bit of a pipe dream that you were going to hang on to your 20 by 45 here.
Yeah, we wish, right?
So that 20 by 45 is now in some cases a 20 by 32, which is still damn good corn.
Yeah, damn good.
If you get some kernel.
Yeah, I take that every day.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. But we tend to focus, we're glass, we're glass half empty kind of people. And so they're focusing on what's not there anymore rather than what's still there. But there is a lot of tip back. And then if you get, a little bit later yet, the corn that was pollinating during the heat, it wasn't to the stage where it could tip back yet. Now it still can.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And it probably will some. So you can see, you can walk into a field and see an alarming amount of tip back. You can walk into a field and find none. And I'm going to say that has a lot to do with planting date, maturity, also some to do with hybrid, some to do with weather, although we were all, too hot. And I think a lot of people just look at the color of this crop, the stands that we've got, the health of the crop is surprisingly good. With the moisture we've had, I'm shocked that leaf diseases, they're present. They're worse than they've been the last 3 years, but so far they're not as bad as I would have expected with the weather that we've had. You can find southern rust easy. You can find tar spot easy. You can find northern corn leaf blight easy. You can find gray leaf spot easy. There's more of all four of those diseases than we've had the last 3 growing seasons with the moisture, but it's far from the repeat of the 2021 disaster that some of us were expecting it to be. Now, if your crop's 30 days from black layer, those ear pictures that you showed would be something close to that. There's lots of time yet to rob yield from that. And as you and I were talking earlier, it's fairly easy to take the top off when top is 320 or 340 or 350. And we had some stuff that, I don't really like doing blister stage yield estimates, but there are people that like to do that. And you could get some big numbers on a, 20 by 45 ear at 34, 35,000 with big kernels.
Yeah. And it matters what you're using as the divisor.
Right.
Of course, Lance.
If you're going to do yield checks at blister stage, I would advise you to use a conservative divisor.
Yeah, 90,000 or higher.
Don't throw a 65,000 divisor on there and then go sell 400 bushel corn because you're probably not going to get there. But so let's see, where are we at?
We're well into this, man. I mean, we haven't had any questions yet, probably because we started early, Lance.
There's probably some people that are getting ready to log on, and they're going to be surprised that.
Well, good. That means I'll miss the questions, and Sam and Jared will get to host most of those. Lance, I wanted to talk about this denning. Really, boy, denting now is a bad thing. That means we sort of missed the doe stage, and the doe stage is the shortest of all. By the way, sometimes 3 or 4 days. And if we skip that one, that's not a good thing.
Yeah, and it's it's just going to mean you're going to have it's going to affect that divisor that you're using. And we've had some years here recently where we didn't have tremendous ear length because we were really dry in June. We had ears that were not huge, but we grew some really big kernels.
Yield component compensation. Yeah.
And so guys have gotten used to, I mean, in some cases, if you back calculate and figure out what the divisor was, it was 60,
which is
62, right? 65. And so some people, have gotten pretty comfortable using 75 or 80 as their divisor. And, it just makes me nervous that we could be overestimating things if you're being a little too aggressive with that divisor, because we're not having the kind of grain fill period that's going to grow kernels that big.
It doesn't seem so right now, unless some things really change.
Yeah, and if you've got, and again, it's it's kind of it's kind of tricky how this works. But if you think about it, if you've got an ear with 800 kernels on it and an ear with 500 kernels on it, which one's going to have a bigger kernel?
Well, probably the 500.
Yes, by far.
That's yield component compensation.
And so when you've got huge ear size, which we set some whoppers this year. One of my Southern colleagues had a phrase I liked, possum beaters. so I might put that in my vocabulary.
I'll remember that
one. so that's like a 45 long ear would turn into a possum beater. But when you've got big ears, lots of kernels, you're probably not going to get huge kernels, unless you're going to, break an NCGA record, because that plant's going to compensate. And in past years, we set a smaller ear, and then we had pretty good conditions through grain fill, and it made huge kernels on that small ear, and we made some big yields with moderate ear size. This year we started out with huge, long, lots of 40 plus ear length out there. But you're probably not going to have 40 plus long kernel rows at black layer. You're probably going to have something less than that. And if you do have, those girthy long ears with 800 kernels on them, the kernels are going to tend to be smaller.
Yeah, you use an 80 divisor for that one. So here's the good news. I'm always an optimist, and we're not at the milk stage yet, R5 stage. And the good news is half the kernel weight comes in during the R5 growth stage. Mm-hmm. So this is why we don't want to give up on this crop quite yet, right? Mm-hmm. Because we still got a potential to pack in a lot of weight. Now, I always like to say, Lance, we've done this education before. By the way, test weight is not kernel weight.
Right.
So do not have the idea that if I have a high test weight, I had a big heavy kernel that backed in a lot of starch. Right. Test weight is 100% related to the moisture of the kernel and when you harvest it. So kernel weight, test weight, kernel weight's related to the divisor. Test weight's related to the moisture when you harvested it. And I always like to try and dispel that myth.
Right.
Lance, high test weight means big kernels.
One of my favorite myths as well that to be dispelled. I've joked that I want that on my tombstone, that test weight has nothing to do with yield.
But you'd be shocked at how many people haven't listened to you, Lance. I don't want you to die to have to get that out there.
Yeah. But they'd have to come visit my grave to see that, and that probably won't happen either. So anyway, let's talk soybeans for a minute. So this is pretty typical of a couple agronomists from Illinois to use all their time talking about corn.
Yeah, we saved 2 or 3 minutes for soybean.
That's right. That's the way we do it. So we were talking earlier about a lot of growth in soybeans, vegetative growth. We've got some lodging. I haven't seen a lot of white mold yet, which I would kind of think with the moisture would be an issue, but it was pretty hot. It likes cool weather.
That's probably it. That does shock me, actually, given some of those canopies, man. There's no light reach to the bottom or wind at all.
Yeah, you can't get through there. are starting to see some sudden death, which you would expect with the moisture that we've had. And also we're getting reports of red crown rot from areas that have not really noticed it in the past. Maybe was there at a really low level and somebody just thought it was sudden death or didn't really diagnose it properly. But I've been getting some really good. If I can find them real quick, I can show you.
Yeah, well, nothing like telling me it might be out there and then having me go out and find it, Lance.
Yeah,
I know there's been a big education from Illinois Soy to watch out for it, and that means I look for it.
Yeah, and that's what these guys were. They were out there yesterday, trying to figure out why they were seeing some dead plants, and a little bit of glare on that. But that's not a bad picture of what the what the red pustules down at the soil line look like on red crown rot. Now, if you could see the whole plant has symptoms very similar to SDS. If you look at the leaves, you don't necessarily get all the same in the stem. Yeah, that's really glary there. See if I can. Yeah, that's not very effective picture.
But I could see those red pustules.
If you are seeing, if you see the red pustules, you got plants with leaves that are dying. The leaf symptoms look a lot like SDS, but you've got the red pustules. With SDS, sometimes you can find a blue mold growing on the roots. SDS is the only pathogen I know that makes a blue mold. So if you see the blue, you don't always see it, but if you do, that's a pretty good giveaway for SDS. But you split the stem and you see your SDS symptoms. Brown stem rot, which I don't see brown stem rot much anymore. You can still find it, but we've probably got better genetic resistance to brown stem rot than we do some of these other things. There's a whole host of, we're up to like 5 different diseases now that can cause the same leaf symptoms as SDS. So you got stem canker, you got brown stem rot, you got SDS, you got red crown rot, even white mold. If you catch it, I've always, white mold is probably the most aptly named disease, but it actually kills a plant faster than sudden death does. I mean, it's really fast when that white mold gets going. That plant goes from green to.
Yeah, and usually the really nice plants too. There's the ones that gets it.
Yeah.
At least they had a good yield when it came in.
Yeah. So when you see scattered plants across the field that are just sticking up and dead, if you wade out there, and wade would be the proper term for this year, wade out there and open that canopy up and look down in there, and if there's the white mycelial mold growth on that outer stem, you split that stem open and it's full of sporotia. Those are little rat turd looking reproductive structures of the white mold. You want to keep as many of those in the grain tank as you can, so you can sell those with your grain rather than putting them back in your soil. That's the way that thing propagates itself. So,
yeah, Lance, I can't tell what it's really hard to look at soybean and tell what the yield is going to be.
Yeah.
Some of these really tall plants, I don't see as many pods as I'd like to down in the plant. I don't know if that's shading or what, but
and
time will tell.
We talked about stress on plants. Well, I think a soybean plant supporting the needs of a 5-foot tall plant, that's just energy it can't use to fill pods because there's so much vegetation. And one of my favorite soybean sayings is 80 bushel fodder, 40 bushel beans, and you can get you're going to run a lot of material through the combine this year, but all this vegetative growth is probably not, and that's why some of the yield gurus do lots of things to suppress the vegetative growth of soybeans, either burning them or rolling them or putting a growth regulator or something on them to shorten the internodes, stimulate blooms and pods and seeds, not height. And so I don't think the height is doing us favors in soybeans either. Plus, it just leads to the lodging, which can lead to disease issues and problems in and of itself. So
yeah. So Lance, the bad news is in our research, every time we've tried to limit the growth of the plant, we've decreased yield.
Okay.
So,
all right. Well,
I don't know. Now give us another 3 or 4 weeks, and we can look at the top of the plant and maybe see if it's a really good yield or not. If we can keep those pods at the top, then that's generally a good good indicator or sign.
And the other thing I've noticed in beans, and this you can't, I'm not counting pods on the plants that I'm looking at. I'm just visually looking at them. And I see lots and lots and lots of pods with less than 3 beans in them. There's lots of 2s out there.
Oh yeah, I hate that.
You know, I don't see as many.
I hate 1 even more.
I don't see as many 4s as I would like to see. So I mean, you can, you know, that bean can make yield however it wants. If you put enough 1 bean pods on there, those are good beans. But when I look down and I see lots of 4 bean pods, and I see a good pod count, that makes me feel good that good things were happening. When I look down and I see some 1s and a whole bunch of 2s and a lot of 3s and no 4s, you know, that I don't know, that's just a little bit of a bad omen to me. Now, that doesn't tell me how many seeds are on that plant, which is what matters. I mean,
seed number in the end.
If you put enough 1 bean pods on a plant, you can raise 100 bushel beans. But I don't think you ever.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
I don't think you'll ever see it. That'd be a weird looking plant.
Yeah, it really would be.
If you could get it to grow 1 bowling ball size bean, it would make 100 bushel too.
Yeah.
It's all about the seed weight.
And I hate BBs, man, when you're harvesting them. You know, seed weight is really overlooked in soybean.
Right. There used to be people that would say that to raise big beans, you got to plant big seed. I never believed that. But to raise good yields, you do have to harvest big seed.
Yeah, you do have to harvest big seed, but
makes no difference what size it is when you plant it. Yeah, it's actually very important what size it is when you harvest.
So sometimes planting those big seed don't emerge as well, you know, Lance, because they got epigeal emergence. They got to pull those cotyledons up out of the ground.
Yeah, sometimes they get ripped off coming through, and then that's kind of a runt plant at that point. So, well, Dr. Bilo, we are past your timeline.
And the good news is I didn't get any questions I couldn't ask, Lance. So wow, score for me, man. I mean, we just got to kind of shoot the breeze here and talk about the crop, and always a pleasure, man.
Yeah, and that's what I like.
Thanks to the audience for adjusting the time. I know some of you probably aren't going to come on yet but we changed the time for our day, and we have 2 of our Crop Viz Day presenters that are going to follow up. Actually, more knowledgeable than me.
And you guys are starting at. Is it 8:30?
Yeah, 8:20.
8:20.
So,
okay.
That's when. And we actually have breakfast at 8:00, man.
Oh, wow.
I'm getting over there.
Good deal. Now I understand why you need to get going.
Yeah. I can feel the stomach crumbling.
Well,
always a pleasure, man.
You too, friend, and appreciate you joining us. And we'll get Sam in here, let you roll, and have a good field day. All right. So welcome, Sam.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So it's not just you, Dr. Bilo. I'm bigger than Sam too. Yeah, so it's more. I'm too big than you're too small.
Well, that does got me some comfort. So, I mean, and Sam's going to be talking about short corn.
Okay. All right. Cool. And roots as well,
and
right?
Roots,
Yeah. Sam is one of those unique individuals that has a passion for roots. And that's a hard passion to have because it's too much work for most of us, Sam.
Yeah.
And so we need a few people who are glutton for punishment and want to spend their days studying roots. So Sam, I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us about your background and how long you've been here and what you're doing in Dr. Bilo's program, and then you can take it from there.
Yeah. So I grew up in north central Illinois, just south of Streator. Worked on a farm with my dad and my uncle. Then went to Joliet Junior College. Thought I was going to be done after 2 years.
Yeah.
Decided to go on. Went to Southern Illinois University for 2 years. Thought I was going to be done.
Okay.
Decided to go on. Did my master's with Dr. Bilo starting in 2021. Thought I was going to be done. Decided to go on to my PhD. So that's where I am now.
So someday, Sam, you do need to get a job and get out of education.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a theme there. You could do a postdoc now, and are you sure?
I'm calling it. Yeah. Yep. So I'm planning to graduate next May and hopefully go to industry working in research. So
cool.
Really enjoy the research.
Yeah. Well, it's Dr. Bilo's program is very unique and has developed a lot of people that have been very successful in industry. And, the contacts that he's got that you're making while you're here and the things you're learning, the people you're exposed to, that'll do nothing but benefit you as you try to further your career. So let's talk a little bit about, you don't have to go through your presentation because they can come here and see it live throughout the rest of the morning, but you're talking twice.
I have
is that right?
2, yeah. So I'm the lone PhD, so I got on the hook for 2 presentations.
Okay. All right. Great. So what kind of generally are you going to be talking about in those 2?
The first one, I'm going to be talking about different fertilizer applications. So if fertilizer prices are low, should I maybe use a buildup strategy and, dump a lot of fertilizer out there for multiple years so I can reduce my fertilizer costs and hopefully still get that fertilizer? Or should I be applying every single year to make sure there's fresh nutrition available for that crop? Or maybe, in between where I apply every other year, where I apply in front of corn, but with enough for that soybean crop.
And that would be kind of what was conventional for years, was we fertilized every other year, always ahead of corn because we love it more. And the soybeans just kind of have to kind of get by with what the corn leaves behind. A word of caution to you, I think you probably know this. Be careful with the crowd today talking about low fertilizer prices, because that's a thing of the past. It does not exist. And there's a lot of angst in the crowd about how high fertilizer prices are going to be. So the growers you're talking to today are going to want to know, well, can I just skip it? Because I'm not sure I can afford it. Might be a question that you get today.
I'm sure it will be. From the research that we've done, I don't know if your soil tests are high enough, maybe you can, but I'd at least get some out there, whether you reduce it maybe a little bit. But again, if you reduce it, you're in a nutrient deficit and you're mining your soil, and we really have to be able to sustain our soil for the future. Whether that's at a higher cost now or it could be even higher cost later, we don't know.
And you guys have done a lot of work with banding. I know Jared's probably going to talk some about that. There's kind of a notion that, banded fertilizer is more efficient. And so maybe I could get by with less without hurting myself as bad. Do you subscribe to that theory?
I think there's something to it. I mean, you always have to go back to what you're removing from that field. And back in, I believe, the 80s, Dr. Margonaut was talking about it the other day, where we were putting out a lot of fertilizer, so we weren't in a deficit then. We were building it up. Well, now we have a lot higher yields than we had then, and we might have lowered our fertilizer application, and so we've been in a deficit. So, you kind of got to worry about that. But I think, in the short term, you probably could reduce your fertilizer rate a little bit and still get away. We did a study last year where we did a corn only amount compared to a 2-crop amount where we did corn and soybean in a strip till scenario. And it was a 2 or a 4 bushel difference between those. So we were still able to get by with that year. But if you continue that, over your entire career, then you could be shooting yourself in the foot.
Right. Well, and it's the way I kind of look at it is you got to pay the piper someday, as the saying goes. If you're not willing to mine your soil, and you want to maintain that level of fertility that you have, if you're not putting on at least a removal rate of fertility, it's going to decline over time. And the way you place it in the soil might impact the yield of your crop, but it's not going to impact the long-term, nutrient levels in your soil. If you're not putting on enough, they're going to go down. Now, maybe that's okay in some cases, might be okay in a lot of cases in the short term. But, if you skip a couple years, that's something that in theory, you're going to need to make that up at some point. And maybe you can short it a little bit while prices are high and then make some catch-up applications. And when and if we ever have low fertilizer prices again, I do know a guy that he was pretty clever a few years ago, had an opportunity to buy something that he thought was a very good price. And so he put on 2 years worth, that year, expecting to skip the next year when prices went up, which that is the way that it worked. But as it turns out, I guess he needed to put on like 4 or 5 years worth on that cheap year instead of just 2 years, because the high price period didn't come and go. It came and stayed and then got worse. So we've been at pretty high prices for a few years. And so we haven't really had a great opportunity, especially with phosphates. Potassium hasn't been quite as much of an issue. but phosphate prices are a little bit like land prices. What used to seem high, now seems like a good deal, and you wish you could get it for, when it was $500 a ton, you kind of thought, man, that's a lot. I don't know if I want to do that. Well, if it's $800 a ton, now you wish you could buy more for $500 a ton.
Yeah.
So it's all relative.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what else other than?
So that'll be my first talk. My second talk is on short corn.
Okay.
And so,
all right.
like Dr. Beal mentioned,
I know something about
corn.
that.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. So,
looking at just management.
Yeah.
Okay.
So how can we better manage, the crop in general, and then how to compare that with short corn? So what we've seen is that short corn can really tolerate a much higher planting density.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have theories on why that is, but we're always looking at the top of the plant. Sometimes we forget about the roots.
Right.
And so, my PhD is a lot on rooting, and so I decided to dig it and look at some differences between short hybrids and tall hybrids. And you'd be shocked in the variation on some of the rooting that we see with different hybrids.
Not necessarily between short and tall, just between different hybrids.
We saw a pretty big difference between short and tall as well.
Right.
Not in the way that I would expect, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So we saw a little bit smaller of a root system.
Right.
Actually, out of we dug 30 hybrids. 3 of them were short corn.
Mm-hmm.
2 of those were on the smallest of all the hybrids for their root architecture, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
Because if you're not putting energy into growing roots, then you can put it towards the ear, so you can get a higher yield. Obviously, those roots are important, so you need enough of them. But if you can get by with the least amount of roots possible, then you're probably in a good place.
Well, and some of the hybrids that you were testing are hybrids we've been using in our groundbreaker trials, and I've had experiences with those where they do root lodge, and people kind of think, well, I thought this stuff was supposed to stand better, and it does. And we do talk about how short corn actually has a little extra energy to put into root growth. But because of the genetic differences you talk about, that doesn't mean that every short corn hybrid has, oak tree like roots. Right. It does probably mean that a tall version of those short corn hybrids would have an even smaller root mass than the ones that you measured.
Potentially, yeah.
So you can't, they're not, those root masses are not smaller because it's short corn. Those root masses are smaller because of the genetics that happens to be in that hybrid.
Absolutely, yeah.
And not no 2 root systems are created the same. And we don't really understand roots very well. There's a few companies that are dipping their toe in the water trying to sound like they understand roots. Most of us haven't even tried to understand roots. And we rate root strength based off of how often does it tip over. And if it doesn't tip over very often, then we say it's got strong roots. And we say it has strong roots. What's that mean? Well, some of the work you're doing is kind of digging into how companies describe roots, how you should characterize roots. Can you even position hybrids based on what kind of roots they have? And that's a little scary for we seed people who don't really know how to answer the questions that kind of research might make a grower want to ask.
Yeah.
But if you guys prove that there's a lot of value in understanding that, well, then we'll have to figure out how to know that about our products.
Yeah, absolutely. We're trying to, like you mentioned, figure out how to place hybrids based on the root architecture. Now, roots aren't going to, be the answer to everything. Obviously, there's a lot of genetics going on behind it. But we have seen some trends with rooting. One of the more consistent ones has been with your root angle, actually.
Okay.
So if you're growing out and you have a wide angle hybrid, you're growing into your neighbors a little bit.
Okay.
And actually, there's more competition below ground than there is above ground for sunlight. So if you're growing into your neighbors more, you're stealing more of their nutrients. So those hybrids don't like a higher plant population.
Yeah.
They need to be spaced out a little bit more.
Do you think they would also maybe not like narrow rows as much?
They probably would like narrow rows more at the same population, because if you have a larger plant-to-plant spacing, then you're farther apart from your neighbors.
Okay, so they're competing with the neighbor in the row, not the next row over.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you give them a little bit more space in the row,
okay.
we've seen a pretty big increase there. I'm looking into that a lot more this year. We've had some hints of that in the past. But when you look at a, more of a narrow rooted hybrid, it grows down, it's growing deeper, it's keeping to itself. And so you can put more plants out there because, it's okay with being closer to its neighbors because it's keeping to itself. So we've seen a lot of differences with, plant density.
Now your density research has also shown that regardless of what kind of root a hybrid has, as you increase population, you decrease root mass,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And is that fairly consistent across root types?
Absolutely. Yeah. We see it's kind of crazy how consistent it is. It's 2.5% decrease in per plant root mass per 1,000 plant per acre increase in population.
Like a straight line.
Yeah. It's,
that's really rare in this line of work. A consistent straight line response.
We see it in the past, and then I knew there was going to be a difference. I was hoping for about the same, but I saw the exact same thing, and so it's it's there. There's something to that.
Interesting.
So if we're trying to increase plant population, get more ears out there, that means we're going to have a smaller root architecture, which means we probably have to manage those roots a little bit better in those plants to maintain that high yield.
Right. And I think some of the work that Jared's going to talk about kind of gets to that.
Exactly.
How do you manage for the kind of root that you think you're going to have?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So. Cool. Well, I think we're kind of at time here, and anything else you want to share before I let you go and get Jared in here?
No, I'm gonna follow Dr. Beal and go get some breakfast.
Okay, well that sounds good. Good luck on the presentations today. It sounds like you guys are gonna have a great day and nice crowd here. So if you still got time to get to the South First Street farm location here, come on out to the field day today. They've got a nice lunch plan, really good. Jared was washing equipment yesterday afternoon when I was meeting with him. So they got a lot of equipment displays, lots of good talks, lots of good information, and always a really quality event. So good luck today, and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. Come on over, Jared. So Jared has an interesting connection to Ask the Agronomist that he does not know about. So you might remember Adam Henniger, who I worked with on Ask the Agronomist for a few years. Jared's kind of the new Adam here in Dr. Belo's group. There's a lot of equipment involved, and Jared's an equipment guy, and he's the guy that can weld and fabricate and fix stuff that Sam breaks or Dr. Belo breaks. And you got to have a guy that's got a CDL. You got to have a guy that can handle a semi. You got to have a guy that can run a welder and a torch and design and build and fix things. And so that would be Jared within Dr. Belo's group. And I'll let you introduce yourself, Jared, and tell us how long you've been here and if you're pursuing a degree or if this is more just a job for you. And then we'll talk about what you're going to be talking about today on the field day.
Yep. Thank you for that introduction, Lance. So my name's Jared Fender. I've actually been with Dr. Belo now for 2025 would be my 10th harvest.
Cool.
So 10 years with Dr. Belo. Started as kind of like an academic hourly, kind of working on the side here and there on some smaller projects. And then as people like Adam Henninger left, as people like Tristan Beyer, Brad Bernhard, they all left, that opened up a role for me to take over research specialist role for this lab here. And then, like I said, for the last 6 years, I've actually been the research specialist for Dr. Belo, the single one. So Adam Henninger would be my predecessor, kind of his job title, everything else. And then now through 10 years of working with Dr. Belo, all of our equipment now has either been built, altered, or improved by my two hands to make our research better. And so that's why everybody talks about the consistency of our research, is a lot of things have to be adapted from the production world down to the research level to make all of our plots consistent, accurate, and everything else. And so it's taken 10 years to do a lot of that stuff. But now at this point in time, finally getting the ground level set on all the equipment, we're well taken care of with everything we have. And that gives us the ability to do all these biological trials, strip till trials, fertility trials, hybrid trials, every trial that you can almost imagine, we at least now have the capability to do in 2025.
Mm-hmm. Well, and some of that, some of the equipment you've got that's kind of specialized, and to be able to do, different placements of fertilizer in a strip and make a strip, and different ways you can make a strip. And, there's lots of different ways that you can do that. And so, sometimes it's difficult to have every different way that anybody could do something. And you can't test every single way that somebody could do something, but you have built a lot of flexibility into your equipment, and you've been able to make some modifications to that equipment to do, some of the different things that you're interested in as far as placement goes, and to compare, fall versus spring, and different ways of making a strip, different places of putting fertility. And so is that kind of the gist of what you'll be talking about here today?
So to dive into what I work on with the lab a little bit here, as a research specialist, I have hands in everybody's projects, whether it be planting, spraying, harvesting, whatever. But the main focus of my research now is actually the fertility side, with a strong focus into the strip till placement and also the timing aspect of strip till. So whether we're looking at fall versus spring, whether we're working with a coulter setup, a knife or a shank setup, whichever setup that you have the ability to purchase on the market, because there's all different types, we're trying to look at the effectiveness of each one of those application points within strip till. So we call it strip till as a whole, but our program, we have 3 different strip tills that we work around, that we focus on. But then we also look at the fall versus spring timing with and without P and K. So we're looking at tillage alone, or the value of that fertility within the strip till. And then that kind of helps us build knowledge base. And then I also couple it with Sam's root data to try and figure out what is happening below ground when we increase or decrease tillage intensity through strip till. So if we're looking at a no-till, what happens with that conventional till or 3 different strip tills? Because all the tillage intensity varies, what changes in that root architecture, and how are we changing how that plant grows within strip till?
So probably have some of that equipment on display at the field day here today, and so that'll give you an opportunity to look at what they're actually using to create these trials. And how do you move all that stuff around the state?
So we take pride in this fact every single crop physiology day when we put up a picture of everything it takes to get off site. But it takes, we have 4 normal pickup trucks for our lab. All 4 of them will be hooked to a trailer, whether it's an enclosed trailer for all of our seed, step decks for equipment. We take Rangers, drop spreaders, 2 tractors, 2 planters, sprayer, everything off site. So it takes 3 CDLs to move everything we have. We have about 170 tires every spring that go down the road between Southern Illinois and Northern Illinois. So basically everything for our job to get off site is very labor intensive. It's not just that, hey, we want to go down south and plant, and then we go pack up in 5 minutes. No, it takes full day and a half to get all of our stuff ready just to go down there to plant 2 days worth of stuff down there. And 2 days is not, a lot of people think you can go plant 160 acres in 2 days, or even, 4 hours. But for us, it takes 2 days to plant 10 acres.
Right.
10 acres with all of our different trials and everything else. So
now, do you go off site with everything, or are there some things you can only do here?
90% of our stuff does go off site. So we have a lot of trials that are 2 or 3 location repeatedness. And the only thing that we don't take off site currently right now is our strip till bar, because it is oversized on width. And so due to state of Illinois permits and everything else, that is just not something that we're set up to haul right now. But again, the main thing that we take pride in is that our planter, sprayer, applicator, toolbar, liquid bar, everything else that we use in Champaign is also the same thing that's used at our other locations. So that data is produced the same way with the same equipment at all 3 of our locations.
So all of your strip till data is just
Champaign only. Champaign only.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
For right now, we're looking at building in the future, might be able to take it off site, but for right now, this is actually only our 2nd year of strip till. And so we're still kind of getting our feet wet, still trying to figure out some specifics here and there, trying to get, a good base knowledge of the whole system. And then we're going to look at building it here in 26, 27, or 2028 down the road.
Is that a 4-row unit? Or?
It is a 4-row Soil Warrior toolbar set up with our Montag fertilizer delivery system. So we take 2 different company stuff and made it all together. We originally had the Montag box to begin with. Have used Montag for, I want to say, closer to 12 or 13 years now. So they're a great collaborator to work with us. And then Soil Warrior 3 years ago now approached us with the ability to give us a 4-row strip till bar that we were able to now integrate into our research program.
Cool. So anything that you've, this is your second year?
Correct.
On the strip till. So anything based on the first year that really stood out to you that you think is, something that you want to continue to pursue?
Yes, and so we, Lance and I actually talked about this last night. Lance corrected me or gave me a different insight to it. When we talk about coulters versus shanks on strip till, you think coulter is going to be more tillage intensity because you have 2 different disc blades that are running through there to stir up your soil on a wider strip. Coulters normally build a wider strip, and then when we pulled those units off and put on our shank, we decreased the width of the tillage because the shank is only, give or take about an inch wide. Mm-hmm. And so that shank is busting up your compaction layer, kind of, fracturing the soil, moving it all around whenever it goes through the soil. Whereas the coulter is just kind of stirring it around and moving it versus uplifting and pulling it away and breaking apart that compaction layer. And so we actually looked at roots last year to figure out how the roots changed between placement styles or just fertility timings. And the coulter last year, what we found actually had a narrower root, so less of an angle, versus our shank roots that tended to have a wider angle. And to me, that would be backwards because the shank, if you have smaller of a tillage width, you would think that root would grow straight down and almost look like a tomahawk / compacted root. Mm-hmm. But then when we look at the coulter, it's growing narrower. And so we're trying to figure out, is that a tillage play? Did the shank, fracture that soil so well enough that root saw no resistance and just grew everywhere it could? And then the coulter just kind of was happy there within the 6-inch wide strip that we were making. What is that root sensing? And that's what we're trying to figure out now in the future. And that actually kind of was backwards to me when I first saw that root data.
And those coulters that you're running, I mean, they're pretty big, pretty aggressive, going pretty deep. I mean, they're not just chopping through residue.
Yep.
They're moving quite a bit of soil.
Yep.
And when I first heard coulter, I'm thinking, just cutting a slit, not really moving a lot of soil. But it actually is moving a lot of soil and does look like it's, it's making a, kind of a berm or a strip there, like what you typically would see from a, shank knife type operation ran in the fall. So it is interesting to see those differences and see that they are, kind of consistent in your data. And that's one thing that, you struggle with anytime you're doing field research is you always see something, but is it repeatable? Is it consistent? Is it real, or is it just noise in your data? You guys replicate everything 4, 5, 6 times, probably.
Minimum 4. My strip till trial was replicated 6 times with 300-foot long plot lengths. So we weren't the typical small plot, but we were large enough to where we kind of eliminated any equipment kind of inconsistencies or anything else through that trial.
Yeah, and I was pretty impressed with. I mean, he was showing me some data last night, and some of the differences he was pointing to were small enough that I thought, well, I'm not sure that's a real difference. But the stats on this stuff was pretty tight. It was a lot of times field research gets really noisy, and you'll see a 20 bushel yield difference. You go, wow, that's a lot. And you see the LSD's 30. And, and then technically, farmers would struggle with this, but technically, if you got a 20 bushel difference with a LSD of 30, that means you don't have a difference. And, he was looking at some single digit differences in numerical size that actually had statistical significance, which means you've got a really tight data set. You've got a lot of consistency across treatments and across reps anyway. And that's hard to do with field research. And I think it's even harder to do with field research related to what's going on in the soil.
Yes.
And so that, that speaks to the quality of the work that they're doing, that they can get those sort of repeatable results. and to actually know that what you're testing is a treatment effect, you've got to have those, you know, tight, consistent, repeatable results. And if you don't, you've just kind of got noise.
Right.
And
Yep.
we see a lot of that in field research, and sometimes you always want to hope that the difference you see is a treatment effect, but sometimes it's just bad data. And you got to be able to sort that out. So you also shared, just on a personal note, you're a tractor puller as well, yes. Jared. Yep. And I tease him about having a bad habit. Well, he's been pretty successful with his bad habit, it sounds like. But so that's you take this equipment thing pretty seriously. Yes. If you yes. I knew he was an equipment guy from what he did here. I didn't know that he had a sideline gig as a successful tractor puller. So that's kind of cool.
Yep. So I on the side this year, we've kind of been running for points. We travel around the state, been to Kentucky, been to Missouri, and a lot of fairs in the state of Illinois with our state tractor pulling association pulling there. So we actually had 30 or are on pace to have 37 hooks this year. So that's 37 different county fairs from middle of June to the beginning of September. So couple that with root digging here in a little bit, we're going to be quite busy here.
So I know enough about tractor pulling to be dangerous. When you say you're running for points, does it, obviously I know how well you do at pulls matters a lot. Does how many pulls you get to matter too?
Yes. Okay. So right now in this current situation for this year is we have 4 guys that are in my class out of, I want to say there's probably 30 tractors floating around the state that have pulled with us at least once. 4 of us have made every single, actually, sorry, I'm going to correct myself. 6 of us have actually made every single county fair, pulled at every single county fair so far. And so each one of us 6 has accumulated points, and all of us are close enough to where if something were to happen, we can all jump from 6th place up to 1st or 3rd place up to 1st and everything else, because it's so tight. And we're all so competitive. Great group of guys that I pull with. We don't hate anybody. We're all friends. We all talk to each other, everything else. So, and that's kind of the nice part about the side hobby is if you see somebody for 37 times throughout the summer, right. You don't hate them. You want to actually go talk to them. And
that's
phone
cool.
Calls happen all the time, even when we're not pulling.
So. Yeah, I would have maybe guessed it was not like that. Let's see. Adam's got a question. Ever heard of Jason Mock?
So in the research world, yes, we've heard of Jason. I've personally never met him before. I do follow his stuff with the relay cropping, with all that other stuff, with the, however you want to call it, the wheat and the soybeans. But I think he actually looked at corn and soybeans at the same time with intercropping. We actually had plans to try and do that 2 years ago. However, we did not have a planner that was set up to do that. Our Almaco, we could not change populations on individual rows just with how our small plot equipment worked. Now we have a precision planning plot planner that we use that's normal production level, uses the same meters every farmer in the United States uses. Now we have that ability. Maybe here in this fall, December, we'll start reopening that page in that book of trying to do intercropping. I know here at the farm, somebody did some intercropping. I haven't seen their results yet just because it was the first year. They did intercropping of soybeans into road wheat.
Yeah,
that's and then usually what I see. They just cut the wheat, I think about 2 weeks ago. So the weeds group here, the herbicide evaluation team has yield data on that. But for us and our lab, we didn't have the capabilities to look at it, but now we might start looking at it because it is gaining traction around the industry a little bit.
Yeah. I've seen guys that will plant soybeans into wheat in the spring, and they grow together. And then when you cut your wheat, you hopefully cut it high enough that you're not mowing off your soybeans. And and if you can maintain your wheat yield, which I would expect you to give up some, I guess, but if you could maintain most of your wheat yield, I'm sure you'll get a lot better soybean yield out of that versus waiting till 1st of July to plant them, which would be more typical for double crops. So, but I haven't studied any of that, Adam. So glad Jared knew what you were talking about. So, Well, it's past 8 here, and I know you got breakfast waiting for you, and probably things to get ready for. So appreciate you joining here on Ask the Agronomist, and good luck today in your presentations. And I'll try not to. I got all my hard questions out of the way last night, so I don't have to bug you today. So I'm good, and we'll enjoy the talks today. So hopefully we have a good turnout today. Sounds like you guys are expecting a pretty good crowd. Got a big tent, and it'll be nice seating and shade in the tent. Hopefully a little bit of a breeze, and get things done before it gets too hot here this afternoon. So good luck today, Jared. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
good,
Lance.
Good to visit with you. And so we'll be back with you in 2 weeks with probably a boring old normal Ask the Agronomist with no fun guests. And I don't know, that would be, what would that be? The 21st, I think, would be 2 weeks from today. So whatever 2 Thursdays are from today. And we'll be back with you again, and we'll be getting close to black layer on some of this early planted corn by that time. And hopefully the crop health conditions remain. Hopefully, as Dr. Bilo and I talked about, we get some cooler weather, although I don't see that cool weather in the forecast, but forecasts do have a way of changing. So hopefully we can get some improved grain fill conditions and finish this crop off strong, and make the best of what we got. So you all stay safe. Thanks for joining today, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Take care.